Welcome to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. I'm Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
This show features questions from the Personality Hacker community that we answer in about 10 minutes. We've been using personality types in our coaching for years, and we'd love to answer your questions about personal growth through the lens of type. You can find out more about us at personalityhacker.com. Okay, now let's hear today's question.
Hi, Antonia and Joe. I was wondering what you all think about the ideal MBTI type in terms of relationships. I'm currently dating a male ENTP, and I'm a female INFJ, and I'm just wondering, even though we feel that we have this connection, we still might have conflict. And I'm just wondering, should you hold much weight to this whole idealized version of ourselves or try to find room to move past that? Thanks.
Thanks, Brittany, for the question. ENTP with an INFJ. This is supposed to be, on paper, or at least on the internet, an ideal relationship, but yet we're having conflict, Joel and Antonia. Is this really an ideal relationship? Is there such a thing as ideal relationships? What should I think about this?
That is a really good question. I think especially since there is chatter on the internet about things like golden pairs or these perfect matches when it comes to type. And I think that there is enough truth in that idea to make it a meme or an idea virus, but not as much truth in it as the weight we give these ideas. So what I mean by that is there are certain type pairs that are going to have a measure of natural compatibility. And think of it almost like the same thing as the idea of talent versus skill. There's going to be some personality types that have talents for certain things, but that doesn't mean they're automatically going to be good at those things. They still have to build the skill and capitalize on that natural talent. And there are relationship pairs that will have a natural simpatico. There will be an easier way of understanding the other person's mindsets, maybe how they communicate, maybe their values or how they make decisions. And so there's going to be almost like a fertile ground for the idea of a great relationship. But just like talent has to be capitalized on with skill, even the most compatible relationship has to be fostered. It has to be built, and it has to be fed with more and more development, maturity, and a willingness for both people to own whatever they need to own in a relationship. So I think that's the first thing. The first thing is that I think that there are relationships that are going to be more naturally compatible. That doesn't necessarily mean the relationship itself is going to be compatible, but the pair typing is going to have almost like a couple credits of something that's in your favor. So why would ENTP and INFJ be considered one of these pairs? Well, there's a couple of things. First, they both have introverted thinking or accuracy and extroverted feeling or harmony as their decision-making, what's called polarity. So the technical name is judging polarity. That means that both of these types will be using these two functions to evaluate the information they're taking in and make decisions. So on some level, they're both going to be seeking harmony and, what gets people's needs met using extroverted feeling. And they're also both going to want to get accurate information. They're going to want to have some precision in their thoughts using introverted thinking or, as we mentioned, accuracy. So because of that, they're both going to kind of get how the other person is making decisions. Now, it's in reverse. The ENTP is going to favor introverted thinking or accuracy, and the INFJ is going to favor extroverted feeling or harmony. So if there's a battle of those two functions, then each person is going to have their favorite. But they're also going to kind of get why the other person favors the side that they favor. It's also in the middle of their cognitive function stack. So basically, that's what all the auxiliary and tertiary functions are, or in our car model, we call them the co-pilot and the 10-year-old. These two functions are functions that we're more aware of, or more conscious of. We spend our lives trying to balance them. And so the balancing act of these two functions is going to be something that both ENTPs and INFJs spend a lifetime doing. So in some ways, there's going to be a good influence that the other person has on their partner because they're going to be introducing and frequently reinforcing the other side of that polarity. So as long as you can stick to your right to have your auxiliary or co-pilot represented, the ENTP going, no, introverted thinking needs to be represented here. The INFJ saying, no, extroverted feeling needs to be represented here. As long as both of them are very clear about that, then it should lead to some very interesting conversations and an ability to come to some simpatico at the end of arguments. They both also lead with an intuitive function. ENTPs leading with extroverted intuition or exploration, and the INFJ leading with introverted intuition or perspectives, which means that both of them are going to feel the most like themselves when they're in an intuitive space, but they're coming from a different intuitive angle. One has an attitude that is directed to the outer world and is more real-time, conversational, more oriented to picking up patterns in the moment. That, of course, would be the ENTP. And then the INFJ is going to be more thoughtful about their pattern recognition. And by thoughtful, I simply mean they're going to go inside themselves. They're going to be doing more rumination. It's going to more likely go deep as opposed to broad and in the moment. It'll be more of a post-processing. But both of those styles of intuition are very compatible, and they tend to really enjoy the other person's perspectives or the conclusions they come to when they're doing these imaginative ruminations, because they cover each other's blind spots when it comes to intuition. They catch things the other person misses, and both people will usually be very grateful of that in conversation. So you've got two types who are leading with compatible forms of intuition and also having the same balancing act or life story around a balancing act with their co-pilot and 10-year-old or auxiliary and tertiary functions. And they're both going to deprioritize sensory things, right? Because the sensing function will be their 3-year-old or inferior function. So they're both going to deprioritize that, meaning that that will most likely be a blind spot in their life story or in the life story of their relationship. But since neither of them really prioritizes it, it's not going to be something that is a conscious frustration. It'll be a more like an emergent frustration. I thought you were going to take care of that. No, I thought you were going to take care of that. Nobody took care of it. Okay, well, I guess that's how it pans out, and we both shrug. And after a heated battle about who was supposed to take care of that responsibility, we move on. So all of that sounds good, right? All of that sounds like it's probably going to be compatible. But what we haven't touched on is the age, the maturity, the development of each of the parties involved. And we haven't touched on how much effort each person is putting into the relationship. We also haven't talked about what the individual people's values and interests are, which is a much greater predictor of compatibility than simply type.
That's absolutely fundamental, are the shared values and interests of two individuals in a relationship. I think that has to be considered. The other thing that has to be considered is the relationship itself is a third entity. You're actually creating a new, almost, it's not a new person, obviously, but a context of two people creating something else when they come together. And that has to also be considered, that you're not just two complete sovereign individuals, but when you do come together, you blend something new. It's alchemy of some sort. And something new is created in that space that can create a whole nother opportunity and dynamic of frustration or challenge or whatever else based on that. I think the final piece here too is the difference between worldview and judgment. When two people have a similar worldview, so in this case, ENTP, INFJ are both intuitives. They have a similar worldview of how they perceive the reality of the world. So pattern recognition is going to come in here. One's going to have an attitude of introverted pattern recognition. The other's external pattern recognition in their intuition. But it's still a similar worldview. Now, the way they decide about what they see in the world is going to be a little different. The ENTP is going to lead with introverted thinking or accuracy, and the INFJ is going to lead with extroverted feeling or harmony. So it's a little bit of a different flavor of what to do about what they see. I think that it's really challenging in relationships when the worldviews are so radically different. When maybe you have a sensor and intuitive in a relationship, and they're just seeing such a different view of what's going on in the world. Maybe their judgments are very similar. Maybe they're the exact same judging function. They use the same criteria to make decisions, but the information they're taking in the first place to make those decisions on is different. So it's been our experience that often the syncing of worldview can sometimes be an easier relationship, or at least a more accessible relationship with a little less challenge, because the decisions are understandable. Okay, you're coming from this approach, you're coming from this approach, but at least we're seeing the same thing. That's an apple, not an orange. We're both agreeing that's an apple. Now, what do we do about it? Do we eat it or do we not eat it? Like, that's the question, right? And so we're going to approach that differently. But it's really hard when one partner says, that's an apple, and the other partner says, no, that's an orange. You can't even really make a decision about what to do about it. You can't even agree on what the thing is in the first place. And so I think in our experience in coaching many couples, this has been one of the through lines, and it really comes back to something Dr. Dario Nardi told us. He said that the value in a relationship, how a relationship's challenges are overcome, the quality of it, the way that partners get along with each other, is the individual self-awareness of each partner. So like in my relationship with Antonia, for example, the greater my self-awareness in myself and how I show up to the relationship, the greater the possibility of me having a good relationship. And if Antonia shows up that way also, now there's two of us very self-aware of how we're presenting to the other person and how the relationship is being created and managed and, tended. And those really count for a powerful relationship. So I would encourage you, Brittany, that you and your partner, ENTP, that both of you focus on self-awareness. How are you showing up in this relationship? How are you making decisions? What kind of worldview are you bringing to it? What are the values and interests that you have? That self-awareness can go a long way.
Just really quick before we wrap this one up, I want to make two comments. The first thing is Joel said the ENTP would lead with introverted thinking, then INFJ leads with extroverted feeling. You, of course, meant when it comes to the judging function.
My apologies, yes.
Yeah, it's still a co-pilot. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, just in case somebody was like, well, I thought they led with intuition. So that's the first thing. Yeah, and the second thing is, well, there are some type combinations that might be more of a struggle when it comes to things like you were talking about worldview. We believe that any two personality types can be compatible with each other. It's the difference of whether or not you're going to have a more simpatico relationship where you naturally understand each other, but then have challenges around blind spots. Like the ENTP and INFJ, they're both going to have a sensory function as a blind spot that's going to show up in the relationship. Or on the opposite, you talked about the challenges of like maybe a sensor and intuitive coming together. And sometimes that worldview can create a problem. And also, we call that a growth relationship. That's when you cover each other's blind spots and you have to learn how to meet each other halfway when it comes to that part. And as you mentioned, Joel, the biggest predictor of whether or not you're going to have success in all of that is your self-awareness, your ability to meet the other person halfway and notice when you're requiring things to be in your sandbox. And so... and then finally, just really, really quick, all relationships have fights, 100% of them.
Well, close ones do.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Ideal relationships are not the ones without conflict. Ideal relationships are the ones where you feel so passionate and you care about this person and are so invested that you're willing to show them your true self. And I don't know anybody whose true self doesn't have a strong measure of conflict. So I wouldn't use conflict as the challenge. I would use conflict resolution as the indicator. I would use how often are we conflicting about little things versus how easy is it for us to get to the other side of that and remember why we're in this relationship to begin with.
Thanks, Brittany, for the question. You can ask your own question about personality types or personal growth. Visit personalityhacker.com/questions. We also have programs designed to help you with your personal growth through the lens of personality types. Again, visit personalityhacker.com and find the program that's made just for you. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Thank you for listening to 10-Minute Type Advice by Personality Hacker. We'll talk with you on the next episode. If you're focused on personal growth, I think you'll resonate with our core content over at personalityhacker.com. We want to see you understand how your mind is wired so you can generate motivation, improve social skills, find career opportunities, and master excellent decision making. But a quick warning, we are advice and action focused in all of our articles, podcasts, and videos. This means that we attract people who like to be challenged to become excellent, to take action, to put in the work to optimize themselves, not simply just gather more information. If you are committed to personal growth and ready to radically find your inner truth, then come over and be a part of our growing community of like minds at Personality Hacker.